Hi, I'm Richard Murphy, and this is the fifth in the video series on the importance of tax transparency. As we have already discussed during this course, tax transparency that creates an accountable tax system is fundamental to the good governance of all jurisdictions, as it provides the basis for the necessary checks and balances that are the foundation for trust by taxpayers and all parties with an interest in the tax system created by their government. This does, however, require that we know who those with an interest in the tax system are, as they are the people to whom the system of accountability and transparency is important, and between whom the checks and balances need to operate. There are at least 8 interested parties that we think are important in any tax system. They are the government of a jurisdiction, its treasury, its tax authority if it's different, its legislature, its taxpayers, whether they are a person, a company, a trust, a foundation, or another entity, and whether they are tax resident or not. Potential taxpayers, particularly concerning foreign direct investment. International regulators, such as the OECD, IMF, World Bank, and now, most especially, the United Nations and civil society in all its forms, including journalists, activists, community groups, researchers, local authorities, academics, aspiring politicians, and others. What does each of them want? That's what I'm going to look at next, looking at each of the groups we've already noted and how their needs differ. The government of a jurisdiction wants 2 things. The first is a functioning tax system, and secondly, it wants a tax system that supports the delivery of its economic, social, industrial, and foreign policy goals. Critically, a government's aim is not to collect tax for its own sake, but to support everything else that as a government it wants to do. A tax system that works in the background is great as far as the government is concerned. The treasury of a jurisdiction wants 2 things from its tax system. They are that it collects all appropriate sums due in tax and that it provides as close a guarantee as it can that the tax system will balance its financial obligations as laid out in its budget. Again, the Treasury wants a tax system that gives it a quiet life. The tax authority of any jurisdiction wants to keep its Treasury happy. It also wants law-abiding citizens who pay the right amount of tax at the right time, and it wants a legal system that reinforces its right to collect tax. In other words, it also is looking for an easy life. The tax authority is, however, stuck between the government, the Treasury, and the taxpayer, which is never the easiest place to be, which is exactly why tax transparency should be so important to it. The country's legislature is another group with interest in the tax system of a jurisdiction. But the politicians in government are rarely the only politicians wanting information on a tax system. Others, and most especially those in parliaments who are not in government, will want information about the tax system so that they can appraise the actions of the government, hold it to account, and work out whether it is succeeding in its aims or not, often with the aim on their part of getting into government themselves. That makes them an especially interested group when it comes to tax transparency. These politicians who seek to hold a government to account want to know the government's tax strategy, its budget, what tax law is and what proposed reforms to it are, the effectiveness of the government in collecting tax, and the government's accounts so that they might appraise outcomes against expectations when it comes to tax. What they also want is the opportunity to debate all this. Taxpayers come in a variety of forms. They include people, partnerships, companies, trusts, foundations, charities, and other entities, whether they are tax resident or not. All of them generally want to know what taxes they might owe, how they can work out what they owe with minimal risk of getting things wrong and of incurring penalties for failure, how to declare their taxes, how they can pay their taxes, how they can appeal if the tax authority thinks they have declared their taxes incorrectly, how their taxes are utilised, from whom and where they can get further information and provide their opinions. Getting all of this right is vital. The tax morale of a jurisdiction depends on doing so. Tax morale is a measure of the goodwill in a tax system, or an indication of the quality of the relationship between a tax authority and taxpayers. It is important to the overall success, or otherwise, of its tax system. It is likely to be heavily influenced by tax transparency. Tax morale also indicates faith, confidence, or trust in the tax system to deliver public policy goals and public goods that many sections of society can benefit from, including infrastructure, services, and an improved environment and quality of life. If a jurisdiction has high tax morale, it is likely that the tax system will be transparent with regard to its aims, and the chance of its success or otherwise in achieving them is high. The opposite is, of course, true. High tax morale is associated with low tax gaps. Potential taxpayers, particularly concerning foreign direct investment, generally want to know, first of all, what any other taxpayer needs to know, and secondly, what arrangements might exist to encourage foreign direct investment, which many states offer, such as special rules, allowances and reliefs that apply to individuals coming to the jurisdiction, any incentives and allowances for companies inwardly investing into the jurisdiction, and who they can talk to. In contrast, international regulators such as the OECD, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and United Nations want to know, are international norms being complied with? Is tax data exchange happening? Is arm's length pricing for tax purposes being applied to all transactions? Is data available to meet international needs, such as monitoring by peer review groups? Are the conditions of loans and other facilities being complied with? Is assistance on any of these issues required? Are there gaps in the tax system that need to be filled as a condition of further assistance? And probably quite a lot more. This is a complex and fast-moving area that no government can now ignore, particularly in the era of base erosion and profit shifting initiatives from the OECD and in the light of recent developments on tax at the United Nations. Civil society in all its forms includes journalists, activists, researchers, academics, aspiring politicians, and others who need to know how the tax system of a jurisdiction works and how it performs. As a result, they need to know how the tax system of a jurisdiction works, how it performs, including what its tax gaps are and how they might be addressed, whether it is free from corruption, prejudice, and bias, whether it meets international expectations, where they can get further information, who they can talk to, and who is to blame when things go wrong. All these lists generally reflect what these different audiences want. However, specific needs may vary. Therefore, it is crucial to not only identify target audiences within a jurisdiction, also to engage with them to fully understand their needs. By collaborating in this way, information and participation spaces can be tailored to requirements, ensuring that users can actually be helpful to drive improvements in the tax system. Making assumptions about what different audiences need or want can lead to incorrect conclusions, rendering tax transparency ineffective. There should ideally be a virtuous circle of demand and supply of information and participation spaces tailored towards enhancing the raising, managing, and utilization of tax revenue. What is key is that keeping these groups engaged is vital to maintaining tax morale and keeping tax receipts against expectations at acceptable levels. In today's world, the interests of these groups cannot be ignored. In summary, what we have discussed are the diverse audiences for tax transparency and the needs that they have, All of them should be actively engaged throughout the fiscal policy cycle. Working out how to achieve that goal is what a lot of this series of videos is all about.